On today's Community Wednesday, let's break down the Ram 7. The Ram 7 had always been a pretty popular choice, especially in the early Warzone days. It was used for semi-long range combat, and it was a very popular sniper support weapon. So, 2 years later, how does it stand? In this build, we'll be using the monolithic suppressor, the FSS Ranger barrel, VLK sight, Commando foregrip, and the 50 round mags. And just in case you guys are curious, the Cronin 2x2 Elite has the same ADS penalty as the VLK. So let's get straight into the stats, starting with mobility. It has an ADS time of 310 milliseconds, which isn't the greatest, but it works. Its reload and reload add times are 2.9 seconds from empty and 2.4 if you leave one bullet in the mag, and it's got a mag cap of 50, so you'll be reloading quite a lot. Its movement and sprint speeds are average, which is pretty good for a long range Modern Warfare weapon. But its ADS strafe speed is below average at 1.7 meters per second, which is what is expected. It's got an average sprint out time of 270 and 390 milliseconds, but it's got a stability of 1.5T and a really great bullet velocity of 1212 meters per second, making this pretty good for long range. And lastly, it has a really great rate of fire at 14.25 rounds per second or 855 rounds per minute. So it gets a mobility score of 35. Now for its recoil. It goes up for a bit and then diagonally to the left. And that's a big problem. It's the left-leaning recoil, making it pretty hard for a lot of players to get used to. And the curve at the beginning isn't the greatest either. But if you do practice, you can easily use this between 85 and 95 meters. And as you can probably see, it has quite a bit of visual recoil, making it harder to use when a target is moving, or when they're pixel peeking. So the Ram 7 can break into the long range category of 100 to 120 meters. So it gets a recoil score of 38. Now for its damage. It has a drop off at 42 meters. In the first damage range, its headshot TTK isn't the greatest, but its upper torso, lower torso, and limb TTKs are average. And in the second damage range, it gets an average headshot TTK with an above average TTK everywhere else. So for 250 HP modes, this is looking pretty good, but the gun kinda changes in 300 HP modes. In the first damage range, its headshot TTK is average, while everywhere else is below average. And in the second damage range, its headshot TTK is above average, while its upper torso, lower torso, and limb TTKs are average. However, if you get one headshot, you can suddenly get an above average TTK. So in 300 HP modes, it's not going to be a great all-rounder as it is in 250 HP. So it gets a damage score of 62.5 in 250 HP and 55 in 300 HP. And when we add up all the categories, in 250 HP modes, it gets an above average score of 135.5, and in 300 HP modes, an average score of 128. Either of these scores are pretty good, but as you can see, the Ram 7 is going to be performing much better in 250 HP modes. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the main 250 HP mode is Rebirth, and in Rebirth, the engagement distances usually aren't longer than 90 meters. So the Ram 7 should be maintaining its effectiveness throughout most of the game. But should you be using it in 300 HP modes? Probably not. There will be better weapons to use under 42 meters. And after 42 meters, yes, it's going to get an average TTK, but something like the XM4 that has way better recoil will get an even better TTK. And in a map like Caldera where you don't know how far your engagement distances are going to be, it's just better to have a weapon that can reach out as far as possible. Or something that doesn't require as much effort to stay on target. Because like I said before, as soon as the target starts moving, it's gonna be a lot harder to hit, even with its great bullet velocity and stability. Its recoil is just a bit too much, and you can't always just rely on being able to mount. So, it's gonna be better to switch to a different weapon for Caldera. But for Rebirth, why not? This seems like an excellent option. Just remember that its reload time and magazine size will slow you down a bit. So that's the Ram 7. Have you used it recently? And if so, what do you think about it? And if there's any other weapon, build, or part of the game you want to break down, let me know. You may see it on the next Community Wednesday. Thanks for watching.